In Mob Ties, players assume the roles of mob bosses vying for control of the small city of North Plains. It's a game where negotiations are going to play a big part. There's going to be times in the game where you're going to have to negotiate a deal with your opponents in order to gain their respect. In this game, you'll start off with 5 place pieces, each worth an amount of respect. You'll move them between various locations on the board, in most cases to try and collect income from the location's racket. And in Mob Ties, this is very important because cash is king. The player at the end of the game with the most amount of money will be the winner. Players will have to be extremely careful though about which locations they visit and who they share those locations with. Not only do you have to worry about your rival family members' homicidal tendencies, but there is also the ever-growing presence of the feds who are cracking down on organised crime in the city. Let's jump right in and have a brief overview of gameplay.
In Mob Ties, each player starts off with 5 players' pieces. Each of these pieces are worth an amount of respect. The Capo is the highest ranking family member with a respect value of 3. We then have the Hitman, the Made Man, the Associate and the Driver. Each of these tokens will also be worth a cash amount at the end of the game if they are still amongst the living, but keeping your family members alive is easier said than done. For the purpose of this overview, the players' tokens will just show their respect values as pictured here. Each player at the beginning of the game will be dealt a hand of favour cards. There are 4 different types of cards in the favour card deck. Kill cards, which are used to attack another player. Defence cards, which are used as defence against a kill card. There are also weapons cards, which can only be used to kill feds when they show up to spoil the fun. And last but not least are specialty cards, which can do a variety of things. They can be kill cards with bonuses, rule-breaking cards, and things like that. The board itself depicts various locations to which players may move their players' pieces to during the game. The board is designed to represent an evidence board in a police headquarters. There are a total of 7 locations players will want to visit. Down here is the docks, Kitty's, the Don's Mansion, Little Italy, the Meat Locker, and the Diner. Each of these locations will reward the player who wins a show of respect there. More on what a show of respect is a little later on. The streets here in the middle are a somewhat last resort. There is no direct benefit obtained from having respect there. There are 2 places that players are going to want to avoid, the morgue and the prison. There are 7 phases to a turn in Mob Ties. Phase 1 is Payday. The docks, Kitties, Little Italy, the Meat Locker and the Diner all provide income. If you win a show of respect in one of these locations, you'll get paid from that location's racket. In this example, their racket values are displayed for a 3-player game. So what is a show of respect exactly? This is where the fun begins. A show of respect is to determine a player with a majority of respect in a location, but at times no individual player will have a majority of respect. So 2 rival family members might decide to come to an agreement in which they side together, adding up their lesser valued pieces to override the other player's respect value. This is where players will have to negotiate, barter, threaten, intimidate, plead, beg, bribe, just do whatever it takes to try and get another player to side with them and not their other opponent. Here in this example, Red is going to decide that he'd like to go halves in the racket's payout with Blue, and leave Yellow out of it completely. Although Blue might be harbouring harsh feelings towards Red because he stuck his hand in a meat grinder last turn. So Red starts to threaten Blue, telling him that he'll kill his associate with a car bomb in the next action phase if he doesn't side with him. He could of course be bluffing though and not have a car bomb card at all. However, in this case Blue isn't willing to take the risk because he has no defence cards and submits to Red's threat. On to phase 2. This is an election and it involves the Don's Mansion. The player that wins a show of respect at the Don's Mansion is awarded the Don's Ring. Yes, it is a real ring. And the player who has it is encouraged to flaunt it. Heck, make players kiss it during the negotiation phase if necessary. Love it. After the winner is declared the Don, he draws 2 favour cards from the deck. Remember, these are the action cards that I mentioned earlier. He keeps one and will give another one away. Players can also buy favour cards at this point, but the price is pretty expensive. They're $25,000 each, so there's an obvious benefit being the Don and getting these cards for free. And with being able to give one of those cards away, it may see you maybe make a new friend, or perhaps heal old wounds that you caused when you, teed a golf ball out of your opponent's mouth last turn. The artwork is so graphic it's almost comical at times. It's excellent. The Don may also be called upon at times to settle ties in the game, and he is the first to go in the action phase and the movement phase, which is the next phase. Basically here, starting with the Don and going clockwise, each player can move one of their player's pieces to another location. You might want to do things like bolster your respect in a location or remove a piece that's in harm's way, things like that. I have to make mention of something at this point though, the diner. The player who won the Show of Respect here has a choice during Phase 1. They can either get the cash value from the racket or forego it in order to bribe the dirty cop that's sitting in the corner there. If they do this, they get to look at the Fed cards before they come out, and you'll see why that affects gameplay next, because the next phase is Phase 4, the Feds phase. In this phase, a number of Fed cards will be drawn from the deck. Each of these cards will tell you how many Fed minis are placed and in what location. If there are ever 4 Feds in a location, it means that location is surrounded. If a location becomes surrounded, a Show of Respect occurs. The winner chooses an opponent to surrender themselves to the Feds and they will end up in the prison. However, if they have weapon cards on them, they can play them to now dispose of some of those nosy Feds, and they will keep their player's piece. So you can see why knowing where the Feds are going to be by bribing the dirty cop is great. You can avoid being in a location that will be surrounded. Now, if you have been voted out and you've survived by killing off Feds, you also have the knowledge now that your opponents are working against you, that they were happy to feed you to the Feds, which it's hard to remain civil to opponents who perform such a low act, but now they will be feeling vulnerable, because there may be repercussions to their actions because the next phase is the action phase. This is where players will usually attempt to kill other players, and in Yellow's case, man does he want to get revenge. To attack another player, you play one of the kill cards, but they may defend it using a defense card if they have them. If the defense is successful, the attack is just ignored. If not, the player will have to place one of their player's pieces from the attack location in the morgue. No coming back from the dead in this game. Regardless of whether an attack is defended or not, a player can play more cards from his hand afterwards. So this plays a big part in the game. If you choose to attack another player, be careful. If you attack a player and they defend it, well, you can bet that they're going to come back even harder in their action round. And if they don't, well, they may not have kill cards to do so. Or do they? This is where bluffing comes into play again. Knowing what other players are capable of is very handy, and there are specialty cards in the game that allow this to occur. Okay, we then move on to Phase 6, which is the bail phase. If you have a player's token in the prison, you can bail him out. It is expensive though, but you will want to do this at times because there is a risk of them being taken to the state penitentiary, which means you can no longer bail them out and they're placed off the board. The last phase is Phase 7, and this is the heat phase. This is just basically a check to see if the heat level rises. This is dependent on the number of players murdered and or incarcerated at the time of this phase. If the heat rises, this means more Fed cards will be drawn each Fed phase, which is going to be because the Feds have more evidence to go on and are moving in to make more arrests. So this obviously increases their presence on the board as well. Players will continue to play through these phases until the heat meter rises to a certain level, which signifies the end of the game.
Okay, so there is more to this game. Locations can be shut down entirely due to the Feds. The driver has an ability to move during the action phase, and this makes the streets locations more attractive at times. There are 2 optional rules. One adds a trader to the game, and the other allows a player to put a contract out on another player's head. And I really like that rule. It can be used as a tool to make other players reconsider their alliances because there may be a cash reward offered to them to break it, which is definitely a nice option to put in. I always include the contracts in the game. It's just too cool not to. Now, obviously, this is going to be a very group-dependent game. Direct conflict between players is basically what drives the game. Backstabbing regularly occurs, alliances are going to be formed and broken, and then you have the graphic artwork. So needless to say, I'm a bit selective of who I'll play Mob Ties with, so I don't expect this game to be one to hit the table too often. But with the right group, it's a thumbs up, and one that I want to get to the table again soon. The card play in Mob Ties can be really great. People I've played this with really get into it. They never just put down a card, they'd grin at the artwork and the scene depicted on the card, read it aloud and kind of role play a bit, which was very nice to see. The cards will also allow you to kind of plan a hit at times. You know, I need to be at Kitty's with the Hitman to do this, and I really like that because it makes revenge all the more sweet when it's planned and then executed according to a plan. There is also a specialty card and that I have to mention, and this is the Shanked card. It's the only kill card that can be used in the prison. I haven't seen this happen yet, but just imagine voting someone out to the Feds. they get arrested, they go to the prison, and then as a result, you put them in a position that they can use that card on you. Imagine the regret you'd feel. You send them to the prison and they kill you because of it. That'd be awesome. But scenarios like that I have seen happen, and that's just one I'm just waiting for it to happen. That's just awesome. The card play, however, can also be a real brutal affair. I've seen about 5 plays pieces wiped out in the first turn once or twice now. And look, here's the thing. If you're exposed as being defenseless by an opponent attacking you and you not being able to defend it, expect no mercy. Player elimination can occur in the game, and in our games at least, it has been fairly common. And there have been occasions where it's happened fairly early on in the game as well. And I don't mind player elimination so much, but if it happens early on, that can be a bit frustrating. So keep that in mind. It's also important to note that a player can buy new cards, trade to get new cards, and discard to get new cards. So if you're after a particular type of card, defense cards for example, take advantage of those options. I forgot the discard part of things in my first game, and with it, now that we've played it with it, it made it easier to build a more balanced hand of cards. So learn from my mistake there. The feds and the way that works, I really love it. I love sending someone out to the feds. That's awesome. The feds in the game will not always be a dominant feature though. Their presence is dependent on the draw of the fed cards. Some games I've seen them really crack down, and others they were not really a huge threat. I think the biggest threat in this game are the players. They're the ones who are going to be playing those kill cards, and they're brutal. Now, the rulebook I have states that it's a game for 3 to 6 players. It does, however, make the recommendation that it's best with 4 or 5 players, and I would agree. The 3-player game lacks in negotiations because one player will normally have a majority of respect in the location, and that might suit some groups perfectly. Personally, I would never play a 3-player game again. Not too much fun in my opinion. My favourite part is the wheeling and dealing from the negotiations that can happen, and the 4-player game was a much better experience, though I think 5 is a sweet spot. I would aim to get 5 to the table for future games. This is one I want to get back to the table soon. It's a pretty high priority as well. It's not a game you can judge after your first play, I think. Once players get in the swing of things, and if players can really embrace that negotiation aspect and kind of role play it a bit, it really comes alive when everyone gets into it. Being a big fan of the Mafia theme, it's a game that's more than welcome on my shelf, and I eagerly await the final product. I'm very keen to see what they're going to do with this. Thanks for watching another episode of Castelli Reviews, and I hope to see you all again soon.